All right, so now we are recording. Lovely. Hopefully they can trim this too. But all right. Hi, Cassidy. So I'm Elizabeth Holmes. I'm a senior chemical engineering major. And thank you so much for your time. If you'd like to introduce yourself before we get started.
Sure. So hi, Cassidy Grinsell. I graduated in 2016 with my bachelor's in chemical engineering, and I'm actually working towards my master's in biochemical engineering at Villanova as well, hopefully graduating this May. So very excited.
Great. So just to kick things off, what led you to choose engineering specifically and specifically chemical engineering as a major?
So my mom actually was the one who suggested it, and she's an accountant, so it kind of makes no sense. And my dad's also an accountant. But in high school, the classes that I most enjoyed were always STEM. So, biology, chemistry, I liked math. And so I knew I was leaning in that direction, that I wanted to do something with STEM, something with biotechnology. And so one day my mom she said, have you ever considered chemical engineering? And back then I was a junior. I didn't even know what an engineer really did, honestly. So
I still don't.
You figured it out. It's fine. So I did some research and I found that a degree in chemical engineering was super versatile. So it could really set you up for all kinds of career paths. So I really liked that pursuing chemical engineering made me it helped me make my decision on my major. So I was able to make like a decision, but then I still had flexibility for what I wanted to do in my career. So I wasn't like pigeonholing myself somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's honestly so relatable. I feel like a lot of people with chemical engineering are like, yeah, so I was really good at like calculus and I was okay at physics and I liked chemistry and bio. So here we are.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Did you have any minors or anything while you were in undergrad?
Yeah, so I minored in biochemical engineering and also in entrepreneurship.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Yeah.
So what is your current role?
So I actually just started a new job this past September.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm working now in vaccine manufacturing, very hot topic right now. But
there we go.
I'm not working on COVID though, sorry. So I work at Merck and I'm one of the technology subject matter experts in our purification operations. We are working on a new vaccine candidate. So it's cool because it's like in development. So we're manufacturing, but nothing's like completely set in stone because we haven't filed for our license yet. So it's like a fun balance between being commercial and then also getting to have kind of some influence on it. So my job mainly is about troubleshooting and also continuous improvements on the process itself.
That's awesome. That sounds really cool. And yeah, very relevant to today. What do you think is the most rewarding part of your job right now?
So I have a lot of things I love about my job, but I think the biggest thing for me, and it's also reflective of like past jobs that I've had, is choosing somewhere where, I believe in the product and that it's net good. So for me, like vaccines, they save lives. So I mean, it's kind of like, that's definitely kind of a no-brainer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I care that I believe in the product that I'm making. Like, I don't think I would feel good about just like taking a job and being like a process engineer to make, just like a random product. I like want to make sure that it's something I care about. And then I'm lucky that I also get a lot of fulfillment from collaborating and learning from an awesome team. And also that there are a ton of challenges that arise, very unexpected from the floor, but I get a lot of satisfaction from, being able to see them through and solve them.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So you just talked a little bit about your team. Are there any other people that you can identify that have helped you advance in your career, maybe advisors or anyone who just kind of helped you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had a ton of people help me. I've been lucky to have a lot of different mentors. Like my stepmom is actually someone I rely on a lot, where she is, a woman working in a big industry. She works in insurance, so it's not exactly like translatable, but I usually will call her about, like professional development kind of advice, being like, oh, how do I prepare for this interview or whatever. But as far as someone who's kind of really had a direct hand and impact in my career, my old boss at DuPont, he was an amazing teacher. So he taught me so much just technically, but he was also like the best cheerleader. And so he would be willing to build me up and always let me grow however I wanted. So he was like pretty hands off in the sense that he knew that I could be independent and he trusted me to manage my own work. But if I had a question, I wouldn't hesitate to reach out to him. So I felt comfortable asking for opportunities in all different kinds of work streams, even if they like weren't part of my job description typically. So that allowed me to get a lot of experience across all different kinds of fields and grow my skill sets. And one thing that really speaks to like how great he was for me is that last year I had multiple conversations with him where I felt that, you know, my compensation was not reflecting the work that I was doing. And he agreed.
Yeah.
He was like, he said that he had been trying to get me a promotion for almost a year. So, you know, he was getting pushback too. So he was also frustrated for me. And I'll always remember what he said to me. He said, as your manager, I don't want to lose you, but as your friend, you should look outside the company. So, yeah. So I really appreciated that he had my best interests. You know, that's what mattered to him most, even if it didn't match with the best interests of like work. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I applaud you so much for having the courage to kind of step up and say, hey, this is not what I'm worth. I'm worth a little bit more than this. And I feel like there's a big stigma, especially around women in male-dominated industries, like talking about finances and talking about what you're worth. And it's not something that we're used to, or definitely it's not something I'm super comfortable with. So I love that you did that. It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic that you had a mentor at the time who pushed you in the right direction and really helped you with that. Other than, you know, that and kind of balancing, you know, saying what you're worth and being in a job that's good for you, what other challenges have you experienced in your career, in particular as a woman in a male-dominated field?
So there are a lot. Yeah, I mean, it kind of sucks because you would think that a lot of things would be solved, but because of how things have been, it just persists. Yep. So I've had a couple of challenges, some related to, you know, like the experience as a woman, and then just some related to work. Like, so my like first big challenge was I really did not like the job I first got out of college. So
that's a big one.
Yeah. So I was in a corporate function where I had been told in my interview that I would be able to leverage my technical skills, but I found myself doing a lot of tedious grunt work. Like I was moving files in SharePoint, and I'm just like, why did I get a degree in engineering to do this?
Yeah.
So and then the management group was just really lacking in trust and didn't really support anyone in our group, and the environment was really negative. So I had my mentor from my internship, and she let me know that she was rotating soon. And so I was able to leverage that contact and apply for her backfill position and get out of that job. So that was really good. And then some other challenges have been that I feel like I've had issues with like recognition, and it could, in ways, it could be related to like being a woman, but also I think being young. And so I had this quality issue in my old job that I was like pouring myself into. It was a novel product, so it's not like anything standard was available. So we kind of had to make our own way to quantify and solve it. And I was like doing all the work, which I didn't mind. I loved it. I was getting really good experience. But we had to form this task team or task force, and someone else was chosen as the lead, which I didn't really think much about. I wish I had sooner, but they weren't even on my team. Like they didn't even work on my product. So yeah, it was an interesting choice by management. I don't know. And so the lead, you know, they've been working at DuPont for a long time. They had a lot of experience with like analytical strategies. So, you know, they had good perspective and they could participate in the conversations. But then it came to the time where we needed to update the director of our business, which, that was a big deal to me as a young woman. I was like, I'm going to get visibility. Like, this is my work. I'm going to finally get to, show someone other than my direct team what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And the other person presented my work. Yeah. So I was so unhappy, and I was really upset because, they didn't give credit. They didn't say they did it, but, I wasn't given the chance to speak for myself. So I feel like that was a mistake from management. And that's something that I think happens a lot with women, is that we get looked over for things because, either people assume that we can't do it, or that, we can only do the things that we have already been doing. So that was really disappointing. And I was able to actually later sit down with management, and I just kind of laid it out there. I was like, I'm doing all the work, and I think that I'm most suited to lead this task force because I'm the most knowledgeable about what's going on.
Yeah.
And they were understanding. I mean, immediately they were like, oh yeah, duh. And it's like, it's just, so they're not intentionally maybe like putting you down, but that's a lot of the challenges with like being a young female engineer, is that they just don't think of you. And so they gave me the lead position, and the previous lead was actually happy to be rid of the extra workload, and it all worked out. But I think not being thought of is like really frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, that's really tough. I mean, I think we even experience a little bit of that even in an undergraduate setting. So I know what you mean. I know that feeling. What advice would you give for young women entering the profession, just to like how to advocate for yourself? Like, how should we handle ourselves in that kind of situation? Because it seems like you did, and it went very well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was lucky because I was comfortable talking to the people in the management positions, because, I knew that they weren't going to shut me down. I had a good relationship with them. So it kind of depends on the situation. And I found it really helpful to lean on my mentors. So I would talk to, my parents, my stepmom, especially, being like, how do I have these uncomfortable conversations with people who are higher up than me, and kind of working it out with people I was comfortable with before attempting to do the uncomfortable. So I think it's really good to have, friends and mentors you can lean on and build you up, because once you feel confident in yourself, it's a lot easier. But it is really scary. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, you're like, you just gotta be confident again. And I'm like, yeah.
I know. It's like, it seems so silly to be like, yeah, you just gotta talk to your boss. And it's like, that's
not as easy. Yeah.
It's not as easy. Yeah. It totally depends on your relationship. So, if the person that you have the issue with isn't, at that level where you can go to them and, say exactly how you feel and lay it out there for them, quite yet, it helps to run it through some other people, get the feedback then, so that you can be like, okay, I know that what I'm going to say is reasonable and I got this. So yeah,
like you're not pulling anything out of left field. Like, I know this is what I'm going to say. This is the right thing to say. Exactly. I know I'm right.
Yeah.
And it's got to be heard.
Yeah. I think the preparation and the validation really helps.
Yeah, definitely, like having a mentor say, hey, like, am I crazy that, I didn't get this position? Like, is this weird? Like, I feel like this is wrong. What do you think? And have somebody else be like, yeah, that's insane. Like, why would you not have that?
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah. So it is tough, but young engineers, but especially young female engineers, like you just really need to be prepared to be your biggest advocate, because ultimately you're the one steering your own career path. So the more that you put into it and feel comfortable driving yourself, like the more success you'll have. Like, you can't just wait for things to be given to you, because like I said, they're just not. And some people just aren't, being observant, and you can't rely on other people to look out for you.
Ooh, oh, I like that. That's a really strong point. I love that. So kind of just circle back a little bit, because I know you mentioned that you didn't love your first job out of college, and then now you say like you're definitely in a spot that you really like. So is there anything that you would have done differently either during college or in that first year after graduation, maybe in your job hunt? Would you have done anything different?
So as far as what I've done since starting my career, I'm pretty happy with how that all progressed. Taking that first job that wasn't good, it was still a learning experience, and ultimately it got me to where I am today. So yeah, it was not fun to go through, but I don't know if I'd say I'd change that. But one thing I do wish I did when I was in college is I was like so obsessed with my GPA and getting the good grades. And in a sense, then your education kind of loses a little bit of the, you lose kind of sight of the big picture. You're there to learn. So if I'm there and I'm more focused on a number than I am the content, not only is my education then suffering, but also if I had eased up a little bit and maybe not put in all those extra hours where I probably could have done just fine if I wasn't so stressed out, I could have grown in ways that were outside of like the academic space. There were a lot of ways that, I should have been investing myself in other things to learn and be a better person and be more well-rounded. Yeah. And then also just relax. Like,
I don't think chemical engineering undergraduates know how to relax, but we'll try.
We're all so stressed out. So I wish that I had given myself more space to not be so intense with like my classes. Because I've been part of hiring processes now. I've hired interns myself, and I know now that grades really aren't a big player in the decision. It's so much more about the person, first of all, if they're easy to talk to. Like I always like people that can convey themselves well and they seem like they're going to be a good team player, and just being able to problem solve and discuss yourself. And I'm not like sitting there being like, oh, well, you didn't get above this GPA, I can't consider you. It's like, no.
That's great to hear. And that segues very nicely to if you have any advice for juniors and seniors looking for their first job, because I know it's so tough, because we always hear, like from the Career Center and from alum saying, your GPA is not everything, your GPA is not everything. But then, when you're applying for a job and maybe you're up against like 30 other people from Villanova, even, it's so hard to feel like your GPA isn't everything. So any other advice you have, especially coming from somebody who's hired people before, like what do you look for? What do you think is a better way for us to go about that process?
So the first thing in the process is to apply to as many things as you can. Even if you aren't really sure if you'll like the job, it's always better to go to the interview, because first of all, you'll get practice interviewing, which is important because interviews are scary. They still freak me out. And it also gives you a chance to learn what's out there, because if you had told me the jobs that I've been able to do since I've graduated, I would have never thought of them as a student. I didn't know they existed. So I feel like there's so much out there that you're just not even considering. So it's just really being open and applying to as many things as you can. And then also networking. I know that this is like always huge, and the professors are big about, setting up networking events, and we have our PD credits and whatnot. And it's important. It really is.
Chemies love networking. Our department loves to network.
It's really good because so if you can make a contact with a professional, they can act as your mentor and advocate. And I know I've had this problem where I feel bad where, I'll talk to a student, it's like, I don't have anything for you right now. Like I can't just, make a job out of my, pull it out of my back pocket. So even if that person doesn't have openings for you immediately, you'll still be on their mind. So when it does come up, they'll be like, oh, I met this person at this event and they were really impressive and I liked how they carried themselves, or their research was relevant to this. I'll reach out to them and recommend them. And then also I've found that in the hiring process, if like somebody that I work with can give a recommendation or knows someone and it's really positive, that can really sway you. if somebody that you trust is saying, you know, this candidate is great, you should really look at them. That's like really a great way to be noticed. Yeah. But then as far as once you get the interview, it's really just a matter of being confident in yourself, talking yourself up, which is another thing that can be really weird, that it's like uncomfortable sometimes to talk about how great you are, but you really need to lean into that, because that's kind of the whole point is to convince them that you're great.
Yeah, and I think especially as young women, that's definitely something we're not taught to do. I know there's a lot of kind of double standards of, you know, like if a man is, you know, very like, he's like, there's never a man that's bossy, he's just assertive.
Yes. Oh, that draws, ooh, that makes me so mad.
And I think that's so true in advocacy as well. Like, you know, you have these guys who, you know, they've never been told to not stand up for themselves and to not advocate for themselves. So it's, you got to kind of combat that inner monologue saying like, oh no, we need to be humble and, you know, and not loud and taking up space, when that's exactly what you have to do when you're in the interview process.
Yeah. And then also even in your career, like I said, being your advocate. So yeah, it's really uncomfortable, and it is something, like I said, it's just talking it out with other people in a comfortable space. And then so when you're in the uncomfortable space, you're ready for it, because it is weird.
Definitely. I do also want to touch on again, because you mentioned not loving your first job. So I know a lot of, like from personal experience, and a lot of my friends who are currently interviewing with multiple companies, especially right now, given the state of the economy and that a lot of firms aren't hiring. What would you say about like, okay, you know, maybe there's this job that, you know, you get this first offer from this company that you kind of apply to just because you're applying to 20 different jobs this week, and maybe you get one, but you feel like it's just not the right fit. Do you take it? Do you hold out until, you know, July? Like when do you kind of have to say, okay, this is what I know I want versus maybe this is what's available to me now? How do you navigate that?
So it's really hard. My heart goes out there for people, you know, trying to manage all that, because I really can't imagine having to try to find a job in this economy as a student. I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah, I feel so bad. But I think, so you kind of need to assess what your needs are. So, because if you're in like a financial bind, obviously you're gonna have a little bit more of a, you're gonna need to take that job because you need to live. So sometimes that's okay. And I think one of the important things to do is say, you know, maybe I don't love this job exactly, but I really like this company, because once you're in, it's so much easier to move around within a company, because a company will always take an internal candidate over an external one, because it is so much easier of a transition. It's a lot less work for them, even just like HR wise.
Less paperwork.
Yeah, and then you don't have to teach the culture, like they already know it. So once you're in, you're in. So if you find a job that you're kind of like, it's not really exactly what I want, I don't think that I'll be super excited about it, but it's at a company you really like, I think that's worth taking. If you have like no other offers and this is all you've got right now, rather than holding out. Because that's what I struggled with my job, is so I had wanted to be in a technical job out of college, and I was really gung-ho for the rotational program at DuPont. I was like, I want to do this. I'm gonna get so much opportunity from this. But then I got the corporate job first. I had been having troubles with getting the interview because of some really unfortunate restrictions that they were putting on that year. And I was just like going back and forth with that program, and they were giving me a lot of grief. And so I got the job offer, and I was just like, you know what, I'll at least be there. And then, you know, when a new job comes open, I can move over. And that's what I did. And it worked out.
That's great. And especially, that's good to hear that you started in a non-technical position and then were able to transition to a technical position, because I think there's kind of a fear, at least for me, and I think for some of my friends that I've talked to about this, that once you go corporate, you can never go back. And that you can, like, once you, work a year out of like deep technical, deep engineering, you can never go back. So clearly from your perspective, that's not true.
No, and honestly, it was a benefit in a way that kind of gave me an edge because I understood a different aspect of the business that someone who went the straight technical route didn't. So it's always good to spin it that way. So I was working in like regulatory. So that was a really easy way for me to spin, to be like, hey, I fully understand how our regulatory process works, what is required for us as we're going through this commercialization process, because I was applying for an R&D job, and they really liked that. And then even when I was in my old job, I was a liaison between regulatory and the technical folks, and I was pulled in that direction. So you can really leverage that. So whether you're working in like finance, I mean, engineers know like nothing about money unless they take the economics course that they do have, which is an awesome class. I took it in grad school. Highly
shameless plug for the Dr. Jackson's economic course.
Yeah. So I think that there are a lot of things that you can then leverage, because as you grow as an engineer, you could eventually be in charge of a capital project, and then you need to be able to talk money and negotiate and know how your decisions are reflecting in the finances, because ultimately businesses need to profit. And that's what drives even tech companies. I mean, you'll get out there.
You're not making money. You're not making money.
Yeah, it's disheartening because sometimes you're like, wow, this like R&D project, it's super cool. I don't know why they're not funding it. And it'll come down to the economics. And that's unfortunately how our economy runs. So if you're able to get any sort of spin on your non-technical experience, it's a benefit.
That's really great to hear, especially I'm going into a non-technical position, so I love hearing that, because it's tough, because you're like, oh, this is a great opportunity, like this is a company I really like, but I think eventually I do want to work in an engineering role and really have that title of being an engineer. But kind of the same thing that you were saying earlier, like I just didn't find anything off the bat that I was drawn to that was a technical position. So that's really encouraging to hear that you can always go back and then have that well-rounded experience with a company.
But also, congrats on the job.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll fill you in later. but yeah, so that's really good to hear. And I think a lot of people who are going to watch this will find a lot of comfort in that, because it definitely, at the moment, for a lot of my friends and I, it very much so seems like you have to commit to, your entire career path with your first job. Yeah. And everyone, obviously, an alum always tells us that's not true, but it's hard to internalize that, because you're like, oh my God, like if I take like a systems engineering role, I'll never work in finance. Or if I take a finance role, I'll never be a product engineer. And so it's so great to hear about people who have their engineering background who go on to do a ton of different things, but then also come back to engineering.
Yeah, I went from regulatory to research, and then I got my first engineering job, like I said, last September. So I mean, you can really play around with it. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Yeah, and I think that also definitely speaks to the versatility you kind of mentioned earlier of, why chemical engineering, and it's because you can do all of these things. Like, if you're talking to, the big four and they're like, oh my God, you're an engineer, you must be smart. And you're like, sure, whatever you say. And then you have this whole other, industry and gas and oil and all of that stuff. So that's really good evidence that that's very true, that there's a lot you can do with it.
Yeah, you can go into any industry and then also into any job with any industry. So it's like it feels like almost limitless possibilities.
A nice little golden ticket we have here.
Yeah.
I love that for us. But so just to wrap up, so I don't keep you too long, what is your most meaningful memory from your time at Villanova?
So my friends, I mean, all my memories, just really any time I was with my friends and any memories I got to make with them was the most meaningful. So even now, I love when, not now because getting together is not really a thing, but when
Mhm.
getting together was a thing and I could see my friends, I really love how we just kind of automatically go back and think about all of the things that we did when we were at Villanova, and we'll start reminiscing, like how there's this room in Tollentine that we would always reserve and camp out in and do like the most ridiculous things while we were studying for finals just to stay sane, or
Mhm.
how we constantly had banter between the business kids and the engineering kids where we were always giving each other, crap about our workloads,
Oh yeah.
or how much money the business school is getting and how everything in the engineering school is broken. um, we talk about the trips we've done, the food that we would eat at the dining halls, and the basketball games, how we tailgated one time when it was like 12 degrees out. That was a terrible
Like
decision.
true fans.
Yeah, but we did it, we made it. And so to me, my best part of my college experience was always my friends. So I'm always so grateful for them and for Villanova for bringing me to them.
Aw. Awesome. I love that so much because I feel the same way. We've been, especially I think, and I'm sure this is true in other disciplines, especially in chemical engineering. I mean, especially for my year, like the girls in my year are so tight. I mean, our whole year is really tight. Like we're all, there's like 55, there's like 55 of us who are going to graduate in May. And I think I could tell you almost where every single one of them is going to go.
That's
Like we're all
amazing.
everyone knows about everybody. We're all like, we've got the group meet that just goes off at, in the middle of the night at whatever time about whatever. And yeah, I think about, when we're talking about, commencement and, we might not get to have parents and family at commencement. And I was talking to some of my chemi girls last night at dinner, and we said, you know what? I don't care if, my parents can't come. I love my parents. That's, I love my parents. But, if my parents and my aunts and uncles and grandparents can't be there, that's okay as long as we're there. Like, as long as I can graduate with like my chemis, like that's all we really need. So
yeah, I always loved that about Villanova, the chemi program, is because, a lot of people will be like, is it super competitive? And I'm like, no. We are constantly working in teams. And a lot of people always made fun of the chemis, and even with my year, because we always hang out with each other. We're always together because we have so much work and we go through so many struggles trying to solve these complex problems, or trying to finish that 30-page lab report, what have you. And I really love that the sense that everyone just comes together to build each other up and to help everyone get through the difficult topics, because engineering is hard. And it's really reflective of even how being a coworker is. I'm not ever gonna sit there and hide answers from my coworker. I want us to all succeed. So I feel like they really do a good job allowing for you to build these teams, and it's reflective of how you need to be in your career.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I love that that's something that's so clearly true across, all the years of chem. I think you're 5 years ahead of me. And
yeah, oh my God, I've been out of school for so long.
but that's still true. Like that's still the culture here. And I'm sure that was the culture before you got there, and it'll be the culture after I leave.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fantastic. And I just love that that's true of all the years. So.
Yeah, me too.
But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. We're so excited about the College of Engineering doing this saga for Women's History Month. So again, I just want to thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for yours. This has been wonderful. And I am so happy that the College of Engineering is celebrating women engineers, because, we have a lot of really great alumni doing awesome stuff in the field, and it's so fun to celebrate and recognize all the work we do.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Cassidy.
Bye, Liz.